BREWtally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. For over 30 years, Rockabilia has been the go-to destination for all things band merch. With over 500,000 items in their online store and collaborations with today's hottest bands, you're sure to find something you love. Use our code BREW10 at checkout and take 10% off your total order. So go pick up your favorite new piece of merch now over at Rockabilia.com. Now, on to the show.
Say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
Happy holidays, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the BREWtally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guests are Vicky and Robby of Sicksense. They have a debut album, Cross Me Twice. It'll be out on Valentine's Day next year. Very much looking forward to everyone getting to hear that. I am looking forward to hearing the rest of the album as well, since I've only been able to hear the singles that are currently out. But it's a thing where, this was kind of an interesting thing. I really wanted to kind of have Vicky back on in light of her former band disbanding and kind of going through the thing I like to do of picking people's brains about, in this situation of when the end of something happens, how do you reconcile that? Also, the newness of something new and kind of taking what you've learned before, implementing that into the new thing to try to be as successful out the gate with something, navigating the various things that have changed maybe in the music space since, but also with both Robby and Vicky handling vocal duties and so forth, but being, a couple in a working band and so forth. It's like, how do you navigate, working with your significant other? How do you balance work and personal life and all those in-betweens? Because to me, again, it's no secret. I find these things fascinating, and honestly, I think it's something for me to where I like to hear how people navigate adversities and try to figure out if there's some way that something they have figured out that works for them can maybe be applied to something I'm going through. Coincidentally, and I don't mean to take this in kind of like a more very serious kind of darker area, but, I think something for me that I find fascinating, especially with these two, with Vicky and Robby, being in a relationship and working and kind of doing a lot of things together. I think for me, it's no stranger that I have talked about, working at the same place my wife worked at. And the job was fine until basically realizing that, when I come home and complain about something, it would sort of be like, I don't know why they're having you do this. Now I need to talk to someone and figure these things out because sort of peripherally what I was going through is attached to what she kind of oversaw. And it became this thing where it was just the work-life balance was really difficult and kind of impacting us. But beyond that, I think more recently, as I'm kind of sitting here now, days away from going to Vegas with my wife to go celebrate, our 9th anniversary and hanging out with some friends and just kind of and wrapping up the year. But during my foot surgery, if I'm being fully transparent, there are things, and I'll probably talk about this more sooner than later, but I've said it was really hard and it was really rough. And I think now that literally I'm here days away from going to celebrate my 9th anniversary, I can sit here and say this year really fucking sucked and was really challenging on a personal level in my marriage, to the point where I worried and wondered, is this it? Like, to the point where I contemplated it a lot more. Like, what does the end of a marriage look like? What does the end of a relationship look like when you have put in 14 years or so, 9 years being married and so forth, and what does that look like? And I think the hardest part about all of it, and the thing that no one wants to talk about when you're this many years into a committed relationship, or hell, so many years into a career even, that there's the honesty you have to look at yourself and the other people, the other things, whatever, part of a relationship we're talking about here, I guess, but just to kind of make it very broad. It's tough, and it requires some self-inventory, and requires there to be a massively huge open line of communication where you can have the really hard conversations with each other and yourself and figure out what's happening. And for me, hearing and seeing, Vicky and Robby being in this band together, that it's like, how do you two traverse kind of being in this thing that is one of your livelihoods, outside of content creation and Twitch streaming and so forth, but how do you two work so much together to make this thing happen and make it go without maybe it becoming a detriment or a sacrifice to your personal lives? And I don't know. I don't know if any of you who listen to this find those questions interesting or even care, but I can tell you as someone sitting on the other side of this, where I look at it and I go, okay, how can I learn from you to maybe make my marriage better, make my relationships better? Because I think that's the thing that I find fascinating about getting to do this show, and I get to do it. It's a privilege, is getting to pick people's brains and learn, hopefully, how to kind of be a better, more successful person. Or at the very least, to be vulnerable and want to learn how to be a better person. All of that said, I didn't mean to make this, like I said, such a very serious thing right out the gate, but just kind of give you a little something I'm kind of dealing with in my personal life. And, to also say, like, I really hate the holidays personally, like working retail and food and stuff like that for so long has really soured me on a lot of this time of year, which is supposed to be the happiest time of year for a lot of people. But unfortunately, as you have probably heard me say on this show with other people, it brings out a lot of the worst in people. So it really is not a great time for me. And I think living in a state where it just gets perpetually cold and gray and dreary, starting around now, also probably doesn't help. And honestly, I think that's the thing I'm starting to learn, is as I have been more vocal recently about some of the struggles I've been going through, that it's been really interesting to hear people kind of in my personal circle reveal the same thing. So when I say all this in this intro, it's not to be a bummer. And, I constantly say this in the show as a whole, is that I hope talking about mental health, talking about the real struggles that at least I can say I go through, I hope helps somebody admit that they have the same thing and maybe realize you're not alone, realize that you can get help and all those things. So all of that said, let's get into my conversation with Robby and Vicky, and I'll talk to you all on the other side of it. All this updated on my end, so now everything looks a little bit different, which is why I'm sure, just like most musicians with a lot of things, it's like you're really apprehensive before you hit update on something, because you're like, will it completely fuck everything up from here on out?
Yeah. And there's a 50% chance it will.
I have been being told that's why a lot of touring musicians are now kind of switching away from, I think, Kempers, because I guess when you go to update them, they just completely shit out on you mid-set and stuff like that. So everyone's switching away from those, it seems. I've heard a few people talk about that. So Vicky, you've been on before. And I wasn't really sure what we were going to discuss necessarily, because I kind of like these to be a little off the cuff, but I feel like there's a few things I kind of would like to discuss with you, just because it's sort of the update of the natural evolution of our conversation from before. And honestly, if I didn't say this previously, I kind of like to learn about how people navigate life, because I feel like there's something maybe that you went through, are able to talk about it, and people that listen maybe can kind of get something out of that. Okay. So, I think for me, it was very obvious that you are someone that is very passionate about music. Most everything you post about on socials, you're going to shows, your Twitch streams, you're doing vocal covers and all these kind of things. So when the previous band kind of went on, by the wayside. It didn't seem like it was going to be a, oh, I wonder what's going to be next. It's a, how long until it becomes a new thing
Right.
for you, whatever that looks like. So in that though, I do kind of want to discuss maybe some new things that you get to experience kind of uh, later in life that maybe we don't always get to kind of go through because there's sort of the uncertainty and maybe the scariness of what now. But how did you find the experience of figuring out what the next thing you wanted it to be going to be, and how did you land on Sicksense kind of becoming the thing that you wanted to do?
Okay. Um, so Sixth Sense had already started, you know, parallel. Um, but maybe it wasn't taking up my full time and my full attention because, being in a touring band and putting out records and all that, that will take up the majority of your time. And when Sixth Sense started, it was kind of just a fun idea, like, hey, this could be cool, and very contrasting to the type of music I was creating with the agonist. And I thought that was cool. That was interesting for me because I know some people do this, and kudos to them, but you see it, I think, more from the instrumentalist side where they're like in five bands and they all sound the same. Um, but
Yes.
yeah, I would never do that because if it's too similar, then why not just put all my time and energy into the one thing, And that, sorry, my our dog is being needy today. Um, Yeah, and that, I think also you can tell that from the covers that I do, and you mentioned Twitch and just in general, like I find music to be fascinating in a sense that there's so many different genres, so many different ways to express yourself, like why limit yourself?
Right.
Um so yeah, when that happened, a few things were probably playing in my head. Like a lot of things, I guess. But it just felt natural, like, okay, well, I have Sixth Sense. We were in the process of writing a new album at the time. So I figured it just makes sense to put all my energy into this, not start another band, not do like 20 million side projects. Let's just focus on this, and occasionally I'll do some like features and covers or whatever if I have free time. But I kind of I wanted to have a bigger role in it, which is what ended up happening. So, um, yeah, it felt very natural. It didn't, nothing felt off about it by any means.
Well, the thing that is kind of interesting about it to me, because I don't recall, I can't recall the exact time of when we did our last chat, but I don't really know if you were really actively doing Sixth Sense stuff, even on the side at the time. I'm kind of, my timeline's a little blurry, but it's a thing to me where, I would kind of wonder any lyrics maybe that you had previously that didn't find a home, were you now able to kind of find a new home into them now that you were the sole focus with Sixth Sense? Or for both of you even, like collaborating where maybe you had lyrics
Yeah.
that weren't quite working and then you kind of workshop it together and you're like, oh fuck, we figured it out, and like a puzzle.
hmm hmm Um, I would say no. Like the way we both write, we kind of just write on the spot to the
Okay.
song. Occasionally, maybe like you're just sitting down and a sentence pops up and you're like, oh, this is a cool idea or a cool concept, but just kind of throw it in the vault and bring it out when it's time to songwrite. Um, but you are right for both of us, because Robbie's also been in other bands and projects that there's certain ideas and there's certain concepts that just don't fit, like if you're in a death metal band versus a new metal band or whatever genre, like you write specific to the music. So for sure, I felt a shift, um, especially on this new record though, where I feel like we really broadened the musical spectrum, so that allowed for the lyrics to also broaden and cover, a lot of different ground that maybe we weren't able to do before.
Yeah, it's like, to just add to what Vicky said, it's just like you gotta like write to whatever the vibe is of the music. So we've collaborated on things in the past. We've always helped each other out behind the scenes. So it's like whatever the music is calling for, it speaks to us a certain message or like story, and we're like, let's expand on that and like put words to it. So that's how we always write and collaborate with each other.
I have maybe a really weird question, and I don't know. I don't know if this is so much my age now at this point, but you know, seeing on the socials and stuff like that, and even beyond your band, this is sort of a resurgence of sorts, kind of across the board now. But you know, the term new metal coming back, people actually sticking with it and using it as like an adjective to describe their band in a positive way that will probably get fans to listen to them. You know, I am of the age that I remember when new metal was coming into fashion the first time around. It became a very dirty word that no one liked, and if you liked anything from the scene, the genre, whatever, you were, you know, quickly ridiculed for your musical taste or lack
Yeah.
thereof. Um,
Yeah.
is it kind of weird, and maybe this kind of goes more to Robby, you know, having, you know, fronted Stuck Mojo and stuff like that. Is it weird to see it come all the way back around and be a part of something that is quote unquote new, not NU, but NEW, but it's been around before, and to see now that it's sort of like a badge of honor to be like, oh shit, you're an OG from the scene from way back in the day.
Yeah, I think every like music style like comes back around in cycles. Like now it's like I feel like the new metal resurgence was happening like a few years ago. I guess it's still current as well. But like right now I feel like deathcore is making a resurgence. There's like a big scene of deathcore, young bands coming out that are really popular with a more mainstream audience, that it's like, what, you like Lorna Shore? Like you like, and this is like their gateway band to getting into heavier music. So but for me, like personally, I always fell into the new metal genre. It was like I was a rapper from Montreal, Canada, and I started like hooking up with local musicians, working with them in bands. So I just fell into that. It was always something, I've said this before, that like I wanted to keep like rapping and hip hop, and then just like if I was going to do metal, just like do screaming stuff, because I was into both styles, but I wanted to like keep it separate. But for whatever reason, it just like all the bands I've worked with, they're like, yeah, just do both. And I was like, oh, okay, this is my lane, this is my niche. So I just fell into that, and I've always been doing new metal. Like my very first band in Montreal was a new metal band, and that's how I ended up getting into Stuck Mojo. And then, you know, fast forward,
Yeah.
here we are in Sicksense.
Yeah, but also, you know, to add to what you were saying, new metal never really left, because if you really think about it, all the big new metal bands from the late 90s, they're arena bands. They've always been arena bands. So I find it funny, and I know exactly what you're talking about, because I remember a lot of those bands were my gateway bands into heavier music. And then not even a new metal band, but let's say Evanescence, for example. They were looped into new metal because they had the one song that had rapping on it. And everyone was like, this is new metal. This isn't metal or whatever. But they were one of my, bands that I fell in love with as a teenager. And there was this thing like in the mid 2000s that when people asked you, what are your favorite bands? You couldn't dare to bring up any of those bands because you would be mocked or whatever. But at the same time, all these bands, always arena bands. They never left. They stayed at the top. So I think it's one of those stories where it's like the genre sparks a strong reaction. And so with the extreme positives, you get the extreme negatives as well.
Right.
Like there's no success story that doesn't have a lot of hate attached to it. So I think what happened when it started coming back and it was cool, I think all these people that felt like they were almost in the closet, like, I can't admit that I like this. They're like, yes, I can finally admit it and like be proud about it.
Well, I think even to your point, though, a little bit, though, I would say maybe sans Limp Bizkit, just because they didn't tour here in the States for at least like a decade. They were kind of like a big band over in Europe and so forth.
Mhm.
That it's like most of the
Yeah.
bands I think that we would identify, like Deftones, Korn, you know, Limp Bizkit, Slipknot to a degree, you know, some of
Yeah.
those kind of bands, almost all of them, up until I would say somewhat recently, very adamant that they're like, we're not new metal. We're something else. Like even if
Mhm.
it's like Korn or any of them, where it's like we were with these bands, but none of what, like, Korn doesn't sound like Deftones, doesn't sound like Slipknot, and
No.
I feel
No.
like that was sort of the thing even back when I was a kid listening to a lot of this music that intrigued me about it. That when people talk about it now that weren't kind of there firsthand, where it's like, well, what's new metal? New metal is anything
Yes.
from industrial to hip hop to, you know, shoegaze to, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
It kind of encompassed so much That it's
Yeah.
like when I think of new metal, it's not necessarily a sound, it's almost a lack thereof. It's kind of an amalgamation of everything.
Yes, that's very correct.
And so therefore when I see bands kind of tagging new metal, to me it's like I feel like they're missing on the exploratory nature of what it is, and I feel like is what you guys are, guys and gal, are doing a very good job of actually incorporating as many different facets in what you do.
Appreciate that. Yeah. I think I think the term new metal is very broad and diverse, and I think fundamentally it would, if you had to bring out some characteristics that are quite common, I would say groove. All these bands always have groove. And most of them have rapping, and if they don't have like straight clean rapping, it's some kind of like what Korn does, it's, you don't want to
Scatting
call
kinda.
it.
Scatting, yeah.
Yeah. And then even Slipknot, it's like, well, he's not exactly rapping, but the flows, and it's kind of like really angry rapping with screaming. Like, so there is kind of a common denominator there, but then I think it's presented in a very different light from band to band. So, but it is, yes, you're very on the ball, like, or on the money with that. You could take two bands like Limp Bizkit and Slipknot, and they don't sound alike. So it's the beauty of the genre, I guess.
How have you found? I mean, I know from Solstice, it looks like you've only played a small smattering of shows, but I was gonna say, how have you found finding other bands to play with? Because I feel like that's sort of the other unique thing was sort of these mixed bills that were a lot of fun to go see, where you didn't know
Yeah.
what you were gonna get, and I feel like that's sort of either the funness for you guys is that you get to play shows and it doesn't matter who you play with because there's going to be a little something represented, but I also feel like that could be a bit of a challenge too, where you're like, how far in any direction do we go with some of this?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, like the two shows we did play in Montreal, like we selected the bands based off of variations of our style of music. Like we got like elements of metalcore, industrial. So that's what we did on like night one. We got like a metalcore band from Quebec to open up for us, Becoming the Bully. And then on night two, we got this industrial band called Lynx to open up for us, a female fronted industrial band. So it was cool. And like for us, it's like, yeah, if we're going to play some shows in the future, which we are, we can fit with like, we could be playing with these old school new metal bands. We can be playing with these more modern metalcore bands. It could even extend to some hardcore deathcore bands, depending on which band it is.
Yeah, I would say the biggest part in putting together a tour package or a lineup, even if it's just for one show, is don't just look at the band and the genre of music that they play, but look at their fans and their audience. And is there a high chance that, 50% or more of that audience is going to like your sound as well? Because I do think within the same genre, there are certain bands that have a more closed-minded audience, so to speak, that are like, I just like this genre and that's it. But then there's other bands, same genre, that for some reason have a diverse audience and like a bunch of things. So I think if you're gonna go into like putting new metal bands together or new metal adjacent bands together or whatever, look at the audience and make sure that you get a more open-minded crowd that is like, yeah, I listen to anything.
I always think that gets kind of interesting because I feel like a lot of times when you go see shows, it just seems like everyone's pandering to the exact same demographic when you go, and you're like,
Yes.
cool. It's like you're the opening band of First to Four on this all tech metal show. Cool.
Yeah.
You're just appeasing to the exact same people. So like try to branch
Yeah.
out and go do something different to get a new demographic to see your guys. So
Yeah, no, that's true. And that's also like we were just talking about this when choosing a set, when building a set for a support show. A lot of bands, ourselves included, and I think it's kind of a mistake. We'll be like, well, let me choose the songs that are closer to the headliner's sound because their fans will like it. But I don't think, like, after doing this for 10 plus years, I don't think that's smart anymore. Like, maybe, but I feel like, no, you should always just play your best songs. The ones that translate the best live, and that way, like, if you get someone that likes your sound, they're really going to like it. It's not just going to be like, oh, this is a watered down version of the headliner I came to see. you know, because there's no way you're going to beat the headliner. They're there for the headliner. They would have to like massively screw up their show, which doesn't happen too often. So I think just be you and play your best music, and people either like it or not, you know.
You brought up something that kind of just made me like have a thought, but it's shit. Now I just kind of lost it. That's fun.
It'll come back.
That's fun that it happened. It'll come back at the most like random time when I'm not even remotely talking about something like that. You know, I would actually, there it was. So you were kind of talking about playing the couple of shows. Obviously, the record full length's not going to be out until Valentine's Day next year. Was there any trepidation on playing shows before the record's out? Like, I know you got to build the live brand essentially, but
Yes.
I hear so many bands. Like, I was just listening to a podcast with somebody, and they were talking about how Bring Me was on Warped Tour. The record wasn't coming out until after Warped Tour. They didn't play anything new because they're like, we don't want the first representations of the new material to be from a cell phone, shitty audio recording, whatever. Is that something that you kind of thought about before even starting playing shows? Like, do we want that to be represented first for some of these new songs that no one's heard?
I personally don't mind as much. I've seen both approaches. The thing you're talking about with Bring Me, but I've also seen people be like, yeah, this song's coming out in a few months. Let's just add it to the set, you know? I think either or, whatever makes you feel most comfortable. As for us, we do have a headline show here in Phoenix on that date, which we'd be playing the entire record because it comes out that day. But the people there will be hearing some songs for the first time because how much time did they have to actually listen to it, you know?
Right.
But we do also have 2 support shows booked for January. That this just happened, so it's not announced or anything like that. But that is a question that we were just talking about, where it's like, okay, we have a 30-minute set. Obviously, we're going to play the singles that are out already, but do we add another song? Like, we're not sure yet. And we may have other shows in like November, December too. We're kind of in the stages of trying to do like one-offs or
Getting
weekend.
our feet wet, basically.
Yeah, because that's easier either here in Arizona or California, like West Coast, anywhere that we could just hop in a van and drive to and play like for a weekend. That would make sense for us. That's kind of what we're trying to do. And yeah, we're still talking sets here, so we might do it. I'm not entirely sure. I think the priority is playing the material and just seeing how it feels. And for me, it's like, as long as it's not too far in advance from the release date, I don't mind playing a new song, but it has to feel like, you know, holy shit, this is such a great live song. We have to play it.
I just always think that line you straddle when figuring out how to present yourself, I think is always interesting, and something kind of leading to the next question. I think you guys have done really well. Is it seems like your branding has been on point right out the gate as far as like color schemes, doing a lot of things with continuity and branding. I feel like I would be really remiss. Where did Deli the Bear come from?
Deli the Bear, he came from our second music video we ever did, which was called Kings Today. We just wanted to, we had like this storyline where we were at a dinner table all together, and there was like an argument happening between Vicky and I with the band there. And then we just had this bear over there, like kind of representing the elephant in the room. So it was kind of like Deli was like this symbolism for like various meanings to the song lyrics, just representing like people online that are kind of just like peering in and like looking at what you're doing, but not really engaging with you, but they're there and they're like indirectly engaging, or just like the obvious problems that are in our lives. It's just right there staring at you. So that's what Deli represented. And it went over so well. Like our fans like really gravitated towards that character, and they really liked Deli the Bear. So we're like, okay, let's just, you know, make him our mascot and just like incorporate him into our future videos. And that's what we did. So he just, with like every video we do, he kind of just represents like the theme. He's like the symbolic theme of the song. And, you know, you could also, I love to say this for lyrics, like whatever your interpretation of the lyrics are, or what Deli the Bear is. Yeah, Deli's
Deli is that.
Deli
He's
is that.
everything and everywhere at all times.
Yeah.
But no, the other cool thing about him too that I wanted to say, like with the music videos, is that he kind of comes and goes. It's not like it depends on the song and the theme and all that. It's not, he's always in our videos, but sometimes it's like subtle. And like with our first release with On Repeat, people were like, "Where's Deli? Where's Deli?" I'm like, "He's there. Just gotta look a little closer, you know." Yeah. But it didn't make sense, you know. It didn't make sense for the story and the song and all that to have him just be
at the forefront.
But then there are other parts where he has a bigger role, so it's just kind of like accounting for another member of the band that is a mascot, and how little or much you want that to be present, I guess.
Well, I think what becomes interesting in it was thinking about it more from, was it something you had planned or was it a happy accident? And it sort of sounds like it was a little bit of both, where it was planned, but the reaction to it was not. And then therefore kind of, I don't want to say pivoting, but figuring out like, oh, there's something here. We should kind of lean into this. And to me, I think that is interesting because I think a lot of people, and even the show and myself included, when I had the old logo, my idea was to have like an Eddie type, you know, Iron Maiden-y character that changes every so often, can become merged, can become whatever, but it's sort of the branded mascot of the podcast. The actuality of what does that look like and how often do you want to incorporate that into something, and the money and all the things to build this thing, it's quite a lot. And so therefore I wondered if it was a thing where it was like, we want this to be a thing, and then it took off. It was like, oh, thank God, it played out the way we wanted to. But I think it's even more interesting that it was a thing you wanted to do, but kind of had the wherewithal to be like, this is something we should lean into this, even into, it's the emojis you use to kind of sign off on all these things. Like I said, it's the branding of it has been really interesting to see kind of take on a life of its own in a very short amount of time. So it was something I was wondering, like, where did it come from? Did you expect it to kind of take off the way it is? And are you now even thinking of where can we take it from here moving forward?
For sure. Yeah. I think, sorry if you wanted to say, no, I was going to say, but learning, like pivoting and learning and changing your strategy and all that comes with being in a band in general. Like it happens musically too. If you put out, let's say, a song and that's the song that takes off and people love it, then you start thinking, well, yeah, we should write more music like this, you know? So I think that's a big part of, I guess, any business where you're just like, well, this is working. Let me lean into it, for better or worse. But with Deli, it's been great. It's been great with this upcoming release too, because it's coming out on Valentine's Day, and it's, you know, teddy bears and love and hugs and all that. And like, we're having a hometown release party, and then the next day, like a very intimate listening party with our fans. So it's like Deli's going to be a big presence there. You know, we're going to have like teddy bears and balloons and all that. And just, you know, it started from an idea of like, well, we want to start building a hometown show that hopefully we can do every year annually. And we were like, okay, what day? And then Valentine's Day. Obviously, it's the obvious choice, you know? So it's been great how much it's been influencing, I guess, our decisions as a band, you know?
Yeah. And I also wanted to say, well, people didn't know this, but at the time we were really struggling behind the scenes with like members and what ended up becoming a lineup change. So we were at a point where we felt like, well, we need more to it. It can't just be like Sicksense isn't a duo. It's supposed to be a band. So the idea of Deli and using him like with our online presence became like, well, let's make him a member. So when you interact with Sicksense on social media, our idea behind it is you're talking to Deli the Bear. Like he doesn't speak in videos, but he can type. So like that's like a fun concept that I think is cool. I've never seen any other band do it, but it's like, imagine if like Iron Maiden was around, which they were in the 80s, but if social media was there and you were able to talk to Eddie, and that was like something they leaned into, and you're just like talking to Eddie all the time, like whenever you interact with Iron Maiden. So that's the concept behind Sicksense and Deli. It's like, well, it was like an extra member for us, and it gives like another interactive experience. And then he's kind of like, our concept behind Deli is like he's tongue in cheek. So he's like a 90s cartoon character where it's like, yeah, he might be offensive and he might rub you the wrong way, but he's just a funny bear. So if you get upset about it, like whatever, that's on you. It's not serious on our end. We're just laughing at you if you get offended or you're mad, but whatever.
He says all the things people want to say, but they can't say it, but it's coming from a bear, so it's okay.
But it's honestly never mean spirited. It might come across that way sometimes. Like we give people what they give us. So
right.
Like, if you're mean to us, we'll be mean to you. If you're really nice to us, we'll be really nice to you. So, but some people take it the wrong way, which is like a terrible thing about internet culture. It's like a beautiful thing. You can connect with so many wonderful people. But then on the flip side, it's like, well, all these negative people are out to get you. And it's like, just don't waste your time.
I'm reminded of a story of when I was out in Detroit, because I live here in Michigan in Grand Rapids. But after working door at a bar for a little bit, I was like, I think I'm just going to kind of give whatever people give me, I'm going to give it right back to them. Mm-hmm. And it's really fucking interesting that when it's negative, people don't seem to enjoy getting the negativity back to them. And I was reminded of a time my wife and I went to Detroit, like I was saying. I don't know what that is.
Interference?
Phone.
Oh.
I don't know. I moved it away, hopefully.
Okay. I was like, hopefully that's not me. But I was going to say, this lady was at the bar and slamming her debit card at the bar, which is a big no-no if you want to get a bartender's attention. And so the guy came to me and I was like, well, I think she needs something like faster than me. So go ahead and take help her. Mm-hmm. He's like, no, I'm not encouraging that behavior. Mm-hmm. And then, I'm talking to the guy I'm talking with, and then she goes, what's your name? Kind of in our general direction. I was like, him or me? She goes, you. And I was like, oh, my name's John. She goes, oh, well, you seem like a real fucking asshole, and I hope you die tonight. And I was like, oh. And I was like, well, I'm literally across the street. Like, I just got to walk across the street to the hotel. That's as far as I got to go. And it's on a blocked road. So, like, chances of that happening, slim and none. Did you or your friends drive? She goes, yeah. And I was like, oh, well, I hope you fucking die tonight because you're just making all kinds of awful decisions. She goes, oh, why would you say that to me? And I was like, I literally rubbered and glued the shit back. Like, I just took what you said and gave it right back to you. But now I'm the asshole and now you're offended. Like, what the fuck is that? Yeah. So it is kind of interesting to see sort of that you've leaned into that same kind of online persona where you're like, you're going to give it, we'll give it right back to you. And how people seemingly don't like that. Yeah. So I was going to say, how has your experience been kind of navigating that?
It's crazy because I feel like because of what we're doing being so different in the sense that, okay, we're mixing all these genres. Okay, we're not the only band that's doing that, but we have a rapper and a female singer and like all these different elements that combined, I can't think of one other band that I know of that is doing something like this. Maybe they exist, and I just don't know of them. But I think a lot of people, when they listen to music, they have like a preconceived notion of what a band should sound like. So when they hear the tag new metal or metalcore, whatever, they're like, oh, I like this band from this genre. This is going to sound like that. And if it doesn't, it could go either way. People could be like, oh, this is fresh and exciting and new. I love it. Or what the fuck is this? Their brain doesn't know how to process it. And so we have to deal with a lot of people that it's like, love the song while he's like rapping and screaming, and then the second I come in, they're like, oh my god, like it was great until she started singing. It like ruins it for them because they're more like in the traditional new metal thing where it's like they'd rather hear a Fred Durst type singing, which love Fred Durst but not the greatest singer in the world. They'd rather he sings and it's not perfect versus this, and I'm like, okay, your misogyny is really showing, but whatever. And then you get the other side where it's like, I'm singing and they love it. And they're like, oh my God, the angelic voice. And then he comes in and they're like, well, it was great until this guy started shouting, and it's just like, you obviously cannot please everyone. But I feel like when you're creating music that's very different from everything else out there, you have to, it's like taking the scenic route, it's just like, enjoy the ride. There's going to be a lot of stuff thrown at you, but and it's gonna be a longer journey, but you're creating something unique and different and special, and that's gonna stand the test of time. So it doesn't really matter, and you can't please everyone. And when these people go into what you were saying, we're giving the same energy back. when they already come and they hate the song, there's no, like, I'm not going to win you over. So why do I need to be nice to you? Like, if I'm nice to you, if I'm like, oh, yeah, let me take your constructive criticism and try and work on the next few songs, is that going to make you a fan of my music? Like, probably not. So why bother?
Yeah,
you know?
that's the ridiculous thing. People will literally comment, "You're trash. This sucks. This is garbage." And then I'll respond back, or like we'll respond back and be like, "Hey, this is," we give it back to them, like, "You're garbage." And then they're like, "Oh, you guys don't know how to handle constructive criticism well." And that's not constructive.
There's nothing constructive in there.
You're just talking shit. That's not doing anything. So it's like,
but also if it's coming from a place where they're trying to be constructive, because sometimes it'll be like giving us advice on how to write music and what to do. It's like, how about you just take it or leave it? Like, when I'm writing music, I'm not writing it to appease you specifically, that one person. So
right.
Yeah. I think, look, there's like, it's nice that fans can come and comment on things and like say what they like about it or dislike about it. That's awesome. But I think like some people don't understand that like an artist has gone through this process amongst themselves and with their producers in the studio, where they're like, okay, we believe this is the best this song can be, or this is what we were going for it. For with this particular song. So we want it presented in this way, and we're going to put it out, and hopefully it gravitates towards people who appreciate it for what it is. But a lot of people that don't like it will come and be like, think like we're asking for their opinion or feedback. It's like, we don't need that from you. Like, no offense, we don't need it. Like, we're going to ask like the person who's won a Grammy, like over, some random stranger who doesn't even like the style of music. It's like, if you like what you like, it's out there. Listen to it. You don't have to listen to this, because there's a ton of people who do like what we do exactly as it is. So that's the thing.
And that's a whole other topic. But I do believe that this whole like internet, like social media, but also reaction culture, like since reaction videos started coming out, a lot of reaction channels are musicians themselves, but a lot of them aren't. They're just fans of music. So I think that sparked an interesting kind of rise in fans of music being like, oh, I can just say my opinion about something and there's a response to that. And I think that kind of maybe navigated comment sections to be more about, I can't just say that I like this or hate it. I have to explain why.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, like, yeah, artists, we're not putting out a song to see your feedback. Like, I honestly do not care about people's feedback. Do I love seeing, let's say, when someone loves a song and they start picking apart like little bits and pieces and being like, oh, the way you sang this line or that specific lyric, I do love that, because that shows that you're paying attention. But at the same time, I'm not like putting out the song and being like, oh, I can't wait to see what people think. It's like, yeah.
It's really been interesting, and I get it on my end slightly, not nearly to the level that I think like musicians that, are putting out music and all that kind of stuff consistently do. But it's always interesting. Like, I've always said the way that this show even started was because I got tired of watching bands being interviewed that I really loved, and then someone just being like, so how's the tour? And you're like, motherfucker, that's your question? You get this person that like, oh my God.
Yeah,
I can do better than that. And then, it's funny when people are like, oh, shut the fuck up, or like do this or ask this question, whatever. And then for a while I'd be like, oh, I'm not doing a good job. And then I'm like, you know what? I don't give a fuck. Like you do, like literally how I started. If you think this sucks, do better. Exactly. And 7 years later, let me see where you're at. Cause I'll tell you what, cause like, and I think that's the thing to me, even when thinking, about both of you, honestly, is I'm sure both of you have gotten so much hate for what you do, something that brings you joy and brings so much positivity to your life, also probably coincidentally brings the most negativity into it, that it's got to be frustrating to be like, I could sit there and take what you're saying and I can feel, bad about whatever, or I could just be like, fuck you, dude, or fuck you, whoever, stranger on the internet, I don't care, fuck you. And a lot of times I used to not engage, but like I said, now that my face and name isn't quite attached to literally everything, sometimes I'll just clap back and be like, fuck you, do better. contact me in 8 years when you're where I am, or, you know, someone shit talks something that I did literally in the first 30 episodes. And it's like, this is like my demo. I'm sorry. Like I had to start somewhere. I could have deleted all these and looked super pro and been like, this is me when I was established and knew how to do all the shit I did, but I didn't. And there's a growth process. And like, I kind of think that that's interesting to be seen, where it's like, you can kind of see me figuring out what the show is now to me currently. And I would almost kind of posit to you all as well, given the extensive nature of what you both have done collectively in the industry, did you kind of get together collectively and go, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's kind of our non-negotiables, and kind of making the launch of this be as successful as it can be right out the gate?
Yeah, I mean, not for every single thing, but there were certain things that, you know, based on our experience, that we're like, we're not doing this, you know? So good example is touring. You know, we haven't done any full tours, and I'm not itching to go out there and do any full tours, because I think in a lot of cases they are a complete waste of time in this day and age, not 20 years ago and past that, or before that. Obviously, if it's a good opportunity, if it makes sense, logistically and the lineup and all that, we'll go out and do it. But I feel like a lot of touring, because you mentioned, how's the tour? You know, like how people ask that. 99% of the time, I think when an artist is asked, so how's the tour? The real answer they want to give, like, is it fucking sucks. But they don't do that, you know, because we don't talk about how hard touring is, and how you're lucky if you break even when you come home, or how if you're the opening band and the venue screws up like doors, or there's a long line of doors, you could start playing to 5 people and then people start coming in. You know, we don't talk about buy-on bands. I don't think a lot of people know what that even is. You know, when you go to show and the opening band sounds really different from the rest of the bands, and most times they suck, they paid a lot of money to be on that tour. You know, a lot of fans don't know that. So,
well, as I say, in addition to the you know, limiting your stage volume and all that stuff,
limiting your stage volume, not having a lot of space,
price matching,
yes. There's so many aspects to it.
Yeah, that's a funny one. Price matching. Why is your
that one
shirt
sucks?
So
that sucks. I always feel so bad for the openers that have to do that, where it's like $60 for a hoodie and you don't know who that band is, and you're like, no one's buying that. That sucks for you.
Yeah. There's so many aspects. And then look at all the bands that have blown up in the last 5 years. It's all happened online. There is no band that just went on the road, tour after tour after tour, like slow grind, and then suddenly they made it. Like from today. Yes. I said in the last 5 years.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I would say the biggest one that did had a viral moment, and then that's kind of what catapulted them, which would have been Lorna Shore, because they've been around for a long time.
Yes.
But a lot of them, it's that one moment, and then they twisted it and they made the best out of it, you know? And it's just the new way of things, like, and not even just in metal, like people are being discovered through TikTok, essentially through reels, through that viral moment. And so I'm like, well, why would we, like, we're in our 30s, like I've done 10 plus years of touring, everything. Another thing that like isn't talked about, prices of everything have gone up. I mean, we all know that. So like gas and rentals and all that.
Fabrics to print merch. Everything has gone up. But the guarantees haven't gone up. It's not like, oh, we were giving you $500 a night, you know, 10 years ago. Now that $500 is $1,000. It's like, it's still 500.
It's still 500 for like, and sometimes you're lucky. I've heard bands that have gone on tour for like $100 a night. I'm like, are you guys stupid?
You're
like
5 or 6 people.
And I get it if you're young. So I get it if it's like it's your first band, you're a teenager, you're just excited, you're gonna live in the van, you're gonna eat Taco Bell or gas station food, and you don't give a fuck. Sure, just do it, live your dream, have fun if that's the goal. But if the goal is
you want to be a sustainable business,
and building your band and growing your band, you cannot do it on the road anymore. You need to build online. You need to generate enough of that buzz where you can get a pretty decent tour, and then be the opener on that decent tour, and then be like, hey, we brought, you know, 50 people tonight. We're not just like some band that's like trying to grow or using the headliner to grow. It's like it's a co-relationship. And
you should add to the show and the tour package.
Yes.
Like if you're an opening band or any band on any
yes.
package.
And that's how I like to judge successful tours. To me, successful tours are the ones that don't have buy-on bands because they don't need buy-on bands. Every band is getting paid and every band is bringing something to the table. So it's like, okay, headliner bringing 800 people. And then we get the second band brings 400 people. And then the opener, 200 people. You know, like that's a successful tour to me. Which,
Right.
how many are they? Like, I feel like, yeah. But we don't talk about these things. We don't.
Well, I feel like that's something I have actually been getting more, and it's funny. I don't know if it's because I'm so tired of feeling like I have to present myself of how I know a lot of this information, which is having a lot of friends through doing this and a lot of friends at tour, and then having these conversations not on here. But because I'm not, and I always say this name as a, for instance, it's not because I don't like him, like we're friends, but it's not like I'm a Doc Coyle who, you know me from God Forbid for 20 years of doing God Forbid. Then I have a podcast. Now I'm in Bad Wolves. I'm not somebody you know from something. I'm just me who decided to do this and have slowly worked my way through. But as someone who's always been inquisitive about, the music business and the industry from all facets of it, I'll learn from the techs and the promoters. And, I even did show booking and stuff like that. So it's like, I have my realm of knowledge, but I love talking about it on here now. So that way, when I do talk about these things with people, it's like, it's not me talking out of my ass. It's that I have things that I can discuss with you and like the price matching, where a lot of people probably don't know that that's a thing. In addition to then that whatever you're selling, the venue, like I know the bigger one here in town, I think takes 25% last I knew. And it's like, that sucks. If you're the opening band and you're price matching and you're having to give 25% of whatever little bit you're making, that sucks. And you're already set up to fail if you didn't buy onto the tour, because that's probably where you're going to make your money is the merch.
Yeah.
So
no. I think that needs to be discussed more. All of these things need to be discussed more. I think getting a band to buy onto a tour is one of the stupidest things you could do, because that money's just going in the headliner's pocket. And I get it. It's minimizing the risk.
And the debt
and the debt. But then are you a true headliner? You're not, because you wouldn't need this. It would be better to take a band that's gaining some traction online, that can bring bodies into the building, maybe a younger crowd that, you're this big headliner that's been around for 20 plus years, but the young kids don't know you. So try and get a younger band. And then the younger kids, their audience will probably stick around because they're not old farts and they have the energy to stay the whole show. And then you'll gain new fans that way. But a lot of people that put together tours, they don't want to take that risk. So they're like, let me just get a buy-on band.
It like covers, they get like the money up front through that. But then it's like Vicky's saying, it's like, well, if you actually bring a band that's an opener that has an audience and they're going to actually bring people, whereas a buy-on band is going to bring nobody. In a lot of cases, they don't. But if you bring a hot band that's coming in, they might buy merch for that opening band and you as the headliner, because they're sticking around. They're like, oh, I didn't know you before.
It's a co-relationship, and I wish more people that put together tour packages would realize that
you can make more money by just bringing up and coming bands up and putting them over instead of being
but again, they're taking the guarantee. It's like, I could get 50 grand from this buy-on band guaranteed in my pocket, or
we could actually work.
Gamble it.
I think that's the other thing is I feel like, from my perspective, in dealing with this, like there's been a few friends bands that have bought onto some package tours, and it actually worked in their favor because they knew they would do well with merch, and they did, much to the chagrin of the headliner, who then made them price match. And then when they still outsold the headliner, they were like, yeah, you're not welcome back on the next leg that we were looking at doing. And it's like, oh, you didn't want to work. You wanted the money and thought you were going to blow everyone off stage. And that didn't happen. You actually had to, do something and earn it. And you didn't. So I see a lot of that, which kind of sucks. But I think the thing for me, when kind of looking, and this is why, the episode I'm literally putting out tomorrow as of when we're recording, is with Chris Kelly, who's in a band that I can't technically mention. But he was basically been a studio musician and done a lot of touring with some bigger bands as a hired gun. But we were talking about his new band, and it's like they chose not to have a manager. They chose not to do a bunch of things that most bands would probably do. And we spent like an hour and a half, 2 hours talking about, why did you choose this? What are you looking to do? And a lot of it was, it's money we don't have. So what we wanted to do is create a revenue stream out the gate. And then we could start focusing on, okay, we have X amount of, we're on this many playlists, we get this many downloads, we're big over here. Maybe now we can look at getting a manager who can help us get onto these things. But for us, where we're at right now, it's so much of an uphill climb. We don't want to spend that money.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the thing that, I was interested in sort of kind of talking to you two about, was getting to kind of figure out how you navigate the newness of where you want to go and how to get there, because there's not really a direct way to do it. And so, like you said, touring, maybe it's not worth it for you guys right now. And it may not be for a long time. And maybe that's going to be the thing that actually leads to your success, is sort of a less is more. Whereas too many other bands want to oversaturate, especially in the beginning, that you're not doing that. And I would almost say sort of having a lack of a home base, like that you could go back to Canada, you could do something in Arizona. It kind of opens up your potential to have two homes essentially, and kind of build in two different markets that aren't mutually the same at all, which probably would be helpful as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're focused on building and growing here. Like this headline show is the first time we're going to do something like that. And, I think it's not a lot of bands can say that they have people traveling from all over the world to see them. Like, we don't have hundreds of fans, but we have people that the very day we announced it booked flights and hotels and bought tickets and all that. And these people aren't millionaires. They're just regular people that just love the band and what we're doing. And I think that's something that we can like be proud of, that I think there's other bands that maybe have bigger audiences, but their audience is like more lukewarm. They don't have that strong connection to that band. But yeah, our goal is to grow here, just create a presence. And there was something else I wanted to say. I'm going to think about that if you wanted to add in the meanwhile. Something you wanted to say?
About this? I think we've covered
Not really.
We've covered it. I think I've covered everything there's to say.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was going to say, when you were talking about the different paths, the thing is that you can't, in anything in life, it's not like you can see the multiple paths and where they're going to lead you. When you're standing at a crossroads, you're just like, go left or right. I don't know where any of this goes. So like, manager, no manager, it's not like you can see the outcome of the two and be like, I'm going to go about it this way because the other way is going to be a failure. You can't. So a lot of these things are based on your experience and your gut feeling, intuition, all that. You make the decision you make. Whether it's the right or wrong one, you won't know. But even if you think you made the wrong choice, let's say it doesn't pan out the way you thought it was going to be, you don't know. Like, the alternative might have been worse. You just never know. But I think it's a self-defeating, I guess, kind of mentality, where it's like, if you make a decision and it doesn't work out the way you wanted, your brain automatically assumes that the other decision would have been better. And don't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's wrong.
Yeah. To add to what you said, it's
Yeah.
just, you just have to have your vision and your focus, and just do what you want to be doing. And like, have a plan. Like, we didn't go into this blindly. We're like, from other bands, we realized what worked in our other bands and what didn't. And we're like, okay, let's take all those experiences and like really plan this out well. So we just like wrote the music. Music was great. We worked with our former producer, Christian Donaldson, because we both worked with him in the past. We're like, it's a great experience. This album's going to sound great, which ended up becoming our 2 EPs. And we just were like, let's come up with some cool visuals, and that'll be fun. And like, we ended up creating, this mythos with our character Deli the Bear. And it's always about like, we're like really involved in every aspect of like all our music videos. We come up with the storylines together. We sit down and we're talking with our bandmates, and we really figure things out, and we really want them to be well thought out. And even if like they don't have millions of views, it's like, well, this is our legacy. This is going to be here forever. You can check it out, and maybe one day it'll blow up in the future, maybe not. But we're proud of what we do. And it's just like, even from like handling our merchandise, there was this need for like, well, we're in different bands and different projects. Let's have one online store, so all our fans from these various things can just get it in one place, like one-stop shopping. So from that, and now I even started doing screen printing. I'm going to be printing our own merchandise, and it's just like this hustle of like, okay, how do we minimize costs, and what can we do amongst ourselves to put our product out there in the world? And yeah, our new guitarist Phil, he's even doing our music videos, so it's amazing. It's like we really like just do it all, so it's great.
I feel kind of bad for you guys getting into the screen printing game. That's literally what my job is making all the inks and pulling them for jobs. So very aware of that process, but also aware of how infinitely maddening it'll be, like when colors don't come out the way you want and figuring things out. So enjoy that new headache you just added to your repertoire. Kind of one of the last questions, and I know this is sort of a very heady topic to kind of sort of dip toes into here at the very end, but and I'm going to kind of pose it first to Robby, because I think this will maybe lead to an interesting answer, but kind of piggybacking off of my experience. So I'll kind of share my experience and then kind of ask the question. So I have found, since being with my wife now for almost 14 years, it's been crazy to see her navigate her professional career and being on a lot of like conference calls and stuff like this, and just literally like, it'll be mostly women in the conference, but like the two dudes that are in it will just like mansplain and just cut them off and do all this shit. And you're just like, are you fucking kidding me? So seeing that, and then working at bars and just kind of seeing how men are toward women as a whole, was it kind of shocking for you to see how Vicky is treated in like online, I should say, more so than anything else? Cause I don't really know what the personal experience looks like in a live setting. Probably a lot more respectable, I would imagine, because people aren't going to just come up and say the most horrific shit to your face, because usually they know that something's going to happen. But have you found that experience to be? Because like it was sort of really eye-opening to see what my wife goes through almost on a day-to-day basis in her profession. Yeah,
it's just a shame. I don't know. I think like some people are horrible. A lot of people are horrible, but there are, a lot of great people out there as well that are respectful. And it's just like, I think in Vicky's case, we'd always talk about like, there's other like female artists who like, as musicians, they're leaning into a lot of their sexuality. And I always say, it's like, that's fine. Like, if that's your thing, go for it. But I just feel like that's like a short-term level of success or audience you're going to gain. But then like, once you get older and your looks fade, I mean, you could always be beautiful, but there's always going to be like a newer model. There's always going to be somebody younger and like hotter than
young
you.
And hotter.
That's just the nature of that game. So I was always just telling Vicky, it's like, look, don't be frustrated with anyone who's doing that. You just got to focus on yourself and how you want to present yourself. And that should just be the music you create. So as long as your music is always excellent and you're like really like taking pride in that and making that your thing, that'll be your roots. That's what you're building your foundation on. And you'll always be able to stand on that, because it won't matter what you look like. Music's to be heard. It's not to be seen. But unfortunately, we live in a world where it is very visual, and people just like listen to music with their eyes instead of their ears. So for me, it's just like, it's the world we live in. And as a man, I just, I act the way I act, and I try to be respectful to women as much as possible. Obviously, I will always treat people how they treat me. So if you're like a horrible woman, it can happen. You can come across them. It's not to say like, oh, like all women are amazing. Like, no, there can be terrible women out there, as you mentioned in your story with that woman who said that horrible thing to you at the bar. Yeah. That's awful. So it's like, but in general, it's like, to me, like, women are to be like protected and revered. You shouldn't be like punching down on them, even if they are like acting up or like being disrespectful. It's just try to keep a level head and cool, and that's what it is. But with my experience with Vicky, it's just like, it's a shame that people can be rude and disrespectful, but you just got to brush it off and just focus on your work and your goals.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about this subject. I don't know how much I can say.
Well, I mean, you can say whatever you want.
It's tough, because it's like, when you're a female in a space that not a lot of them exist, so it's like male dominated, 90% like men. I think it boils down to confidence. I've never been mistreated or disrespected by people that are very confident in their own skills and their own capabilities. It's always been, and unfortunately, it's not just internet trolls, it's people behind the scenes, fellow musicians, the thing with mansplaining, like you said. It's always been people like that where it's like, I want you to be good, but you can't be better than me, you know? And because I think it's like fragile ego for a lot of dudes where it's like, I don't play guitar, but like, say I were to pick up a guitar and start shredding in front of a guitar player, for some reason it would hurt them more than if another dude did it. If another dude did it, it'd be like, yeah, let's fucking jam, Um, and again, not for all men. I think
Right.
It comes down to insecurity, and this is male and female. If someone is feeling insecure about themselves and you're the embodiment of what they're trying to be, and you're younger or hotter or whatever, then that taps into your ego. Which I don't know, I think is stupid. Like when I was growing up, I admired musicians. I wanted to be like them, men or women. I'd be like, holy shit, this is amazing. I want to be able to do that one day. I would hate to live in a world where I would see someone that's better than me and be like salty about it. Like, no,
Right.
it should be inspiration,
Yeah, it's to us, it's like,
And
that's cool. Like, great.
Yeah.
Like, how talented this person is. That's amazing.
yeah. And like the joke that it's like there's always some 12-year-old Asian kid that's just better than you in all aspects. It's true, So
Yeah.
but I do think that's where it comes from. Whether it's internet trolls or other musicians or whatever, they're just salty about themselves. And they see someone else that's doing it better, and especially if it's a woman, because women shouldn't be here, then it's even worse for them. Which I find hilarious because, like, if you think about heavy metal, how a lot of bands started, it literally started from men trying to sing like women, like
Right.
literally trying to hit the high notes and all that, like which women can do in their sleep. So it's kind of funny to say that women don't belong in this. But that's a whole other topic.
Right.
But yeah.
No, I just always find the thing, and like I'm really not looking forward to putting this episode out that I did a couple of weeks, probably about a month ago, with the singer of Gore, with Haley Roten, because she's a space engineer, and so I was trying to kind of get to this sort of same talking point of just like, I don't understand, I don't know dick about your career.
Yeah.
So I know that my wife working in the pharmaceutical, sterile injectables space, that's something I didn't know anything about either. And it's also kind of rarefied air for like who does these things. So it's like when you're becoming a director, when you're kind of becoming these things, there's only like one or two of you. So therefore you have to kind of be the best of the best. So kind of like I said, seeing how my wife's career has gone, I was trying to ask Haley this question, and from my perspective, turned into me going and almost doing what I didn't want to do, which is like, okay, so you're a woman and you are in this thing, but it's like, I don't know anything about this career field. What do people look at you even weirder, even though you're kind of in a weird space anyway that's very niche? Are you judged for being a metal vocalist even in this? Like, or is it, whatever? Just kind of trying to ask those questions. And I feel like all I did was just like, you woman, is it weird? Do you get like, it just felt like I didn't articulate it very well. So I'm like, cool. I just diverted it into this thing that is garbage. And so I'm just like in my head, like people are going to just shit all over me for this one because I didn't do a very good job of articulating in my own way. But
okay. Yeah. I mean,
so that's my own insecurity about it. But
yeah, I think the intentions are good. And I think, maybe you don't want to be reminded every single time, but I think it's in how you're reminded. Like you didn't bring it up in a way where it's like, so how is it being a woman in this band? Because nobody.
Well, I flipped it and asked Robby because I wanted to get his like.
Yeah,
because like I said, it was so shocking to me. Like once I started seeing it happen, I was like, oh my god, this Jesus Christ, this is the thing, and it is really fucking bad. I should be better about this. And even going back to like I did it earlier in the episode where it's like my grandmother. Anytime we would go out and servers would address us as you guys and be like, well, I don't know about the guys, but that's ladies, or I as a lady would like. And so it's like, even that I've tried to get out of my head of like, don't address everyone as like guys,
but
like don't do that.
I get it, but that's also case by case. Like I don't care if you say, hey guys. Like I have female friends that'll be like, hey guys, like it's just, but case by case. I think every person's different, and I think that's ultimately the realization that a lot of people have to make, that it's just like you cannot group all women together. You cannot group all men together and assume they are the same. Like, I've met and I have extraordinary men in my life that I'm very happy about. I even had like a whole Threads argument with this, like, I don't know, middle-aged woman where she was like, it's all men are to blame until it's no men. I hope you understand that. And I was just like, man, this woman has been hurt in her life, clearly. Like, she doesn't have a strong male role model to feel this way about all men, because I think it's wrong. And then, you know, the good thing you guys were saying, not all women are great either. Like, I think a lot of, I know a lot of like the terrible.
Well, no, I was agreeing.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, in my own experience, a lot of the bad things that have happened to me behind the scenes have been
because of women.
So but then, yeah, it's just like, just judge the person for who they are. And that's it.
Right.
There's good people, there's bad people, there's people in between, can be good or bad depending on the day, you know? But yeah, I will say, obviously, women are more scrutinized. They're more expected to be perfect at all times. You know, you put on makeup. Why are you wearing so much makeup? You don't put on makeup. Oh, you know, you look weird. You look different. You know, we hear things that men never hear because it's not relevant to a man. So it's fine. You just brush it off and you move on, and you're like, all right, it is what it is.
It's just like what you said earlier, John. It's just like how you got into podcasting. It's the same thing with us in music. It's just like, well, this is what we do. If you don't like it, well, do it better, you know?
Yeah.
You're so confused by a woman being here, well, do something better.
Yeah, good luck.
I think the silly thing, like, to wrap this up, is just like, the default argument is just like, oh, you're not even talented, Vicky, you have no talent, you're just a woman, so you shouldn't be there to begin with. And it's just like, no, if you use your ears, like I said, don't use your eyes, listen to music with your ears, you can hear she's a really talented vocalist, she's a really talented musician, she's amazing. So it's like, it's not because she's just default a woman, oh, she's here and she got opportunities, she's worked her ass off for them because she's talented, and that's what it comes down to.
And in a lot of cases, probably even more so than the guys that are there too.
Yes, it's true. The number of times, you know, to wrap this up, I will say this because maybe people should pay attention, but the top vocalists in the game right now in metal, for females, you will see all of them live and they will nail it live. They will be like just as good as studio. And if not vocally, then they bring the performance aspect in there. They're like working hard. They will not go on stage and like half-ass their performance. No. But I can think of a lot of huge bands that are male fronted that the vocalists like, nah, bro, like they're not trying. They're not even putting 50%, but the band is still huge. And I just think it's just a lack of practice and a lack of like work ethic, where it's like, well, I don't need to go on stage and be perfect.
People are going to show up anyways.
Yeah, but a lot of women, because they see the mean comments, they see like you hit one bad note, they're like, oh, I have to be perfect. I have to be perfect to be able to compete with the boys, when the boys aren't trying to be perfect. Like, I have seen videos with like out of pitch singing, and there's comments in there like, oh my God, he sounds like an angel. And like, I'll hit one bad note and it's like, oh, she didn't quite, you know, it's just, it is what it is. So,
well, God forbid you didn't like some of these other people do.
Yeah.
Tracks.
But that is true. And we like, look, we do use a lot of tracks live, but it's all like, you know, keys and sound design and backing vocals. I would never put my main vocal like on tracks. I think that's lazy. That's what.
It is. And I've definitely I've been to some shows very recently where I watched that track get engaged, and I was just like, and people are like, he sounds so great tonight. And I'm like, I would too if my God mode was on. Which is literally what that profile was called when it got put.
But
hey, whatever.
Yeah. It goes so against metal though. Like, metal's supposed to just like be about getting up there and like fucking shit up, and the rawness of it. And I understand production has come a long way, and I like clean, pristine productions, which is like what our record is, but keep the authenticity. Go on stage and do it, and pivot and do it a little differently and switch it up. Like, it is what it is. I'm not gonna change it. I can just yell at clouds, but we're still gonna do it. So it's fine.
I'll have you guys plug your socials and whatever else you'd like to plug online. But last question, since I probably won't talk to you guys in any capacity before the record comes out. What are you most excited for everyone to hear with the on the record? I like asking that since it's only been yours up until it'll come out.
You want to answer first, since I've been talking, and then I'll answer?
I'd say just the opportunity to hear it in its entirety, how like the exact order of the track listing. It's a really cool story, and it just like I feel like every song really flows well into the next one, and it's just takes you on a ride. It's like a real emotional journey. So I'm excited for that aspect of it. It's the most emotional, lyrically written record I've done. And I'm excited for people to hear that. So it's cool. It's like you're always with us. Just expect the unexpected.
Yeah, I think that's what it is for me too. Like there's a lot put into this record, a lot of like reworking, like Robby mentioned earlier, lineup changes and stuff like that. Stuff got scratched and redone, and then putting together the flow of like what track starts and what track, follows and all that, and some interludes that I put together. I'm excited because I know like I've been the most involved in this record than any record I've been a part of, and not just vocally, which vocally there's already so much going on, but that like to me is the obvious. It's like I've always done that. I've always recorded like 100 tracks of vocals. That's fine, but there's like keys and sound design and interludes and structures and production and all that, where it's like this was my, I guess selfishly, my first opportunity to do something so on to that level. So I'm excited for that, because it just feels like the more you are involved in something, the more it feels like yours. I'm not just a vocalist here, which already is a big part of the band, obviously, but it's even more than that. So I'm excited to see how that's going to be received. And also, another thing I want to mention, because at this stage we only have 2 songs out, the next songs that we're going to be releasing in terms of singles are my personal favorites too. So I'm excited for those to come out, because it was like, okay, I like the songs we put out, but the ones that are coming up are more, they're closer to my heart. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome. And then where can everyone find you, or whatever else you would like to plug online?
Most of our socials are at Sicksense.
But honestly, if you just go on Google and you type Sicksense one word, yeah. I think we just pop up. And there's like a link tree with all our links there, and pre-orders, and our merch store, and tickets for our show. If you're in Arizona, Phoenix area, and you don't have anything to do Valentine's Day, come to our show. It'll be great.
Or even if you're not, come to the show.
Or even if you're not, there are other people that are doing that.
Find the love of your life at our show.
That's true. A lot of single people are coming to the show, so
that'll be wild if you guys have a marriage that happens after the first show.
I mean, you never know.
Free guest list for life. Yeah. To anyone who
throw that out there. There you go. Well, thanks so much for taking the time chatting. Very much looking forward to the record coming out in a few months, as when we're recording this. But we'll give a lot of people, some lonely lovers, maybe something to bond over.
Yes. Thanks for
enjoy the rest of your days, and chat with you guys. Hopefully, when the record's out and you guys are touring, hopefully somewhere around this way.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah. Hey, if we can hop in a vehicle and make the drive and play a show, we'll do it. So there's that.
And I don't ever get to say this to end an episode, because usually it's not a thing, but pet that dog for me.
Yes.
I'm an avid dog lover, so anytime I see dogs, I'm always like, even when my friends are on tour and there's like a dog, I'm like, pet that dog for me today, and say it came from me.
Yeah.
But enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for doing this.
You too. Appreciate you.
John.
Yeah. So that was my conversation with Vicky and Robby. I want to thank them once again for taking the time to do the chats. Their debut album, Cross Me Twice, will be out on Valentine's Day. You can go pre-order. There are tons of links in not only the Sicksense socials, Vicky's socials, Robby's socials, everything. So if you want to go there, there's link trees to go pre-order the album and some merch and all that kind of stuff. So go support the band if you are so inclined to. Kind of thinking about it to kind of wrap up on the other side of the conversation. It's been so interesting to see the resurgence of nu metal. I mean, I feel like it's just so weird to remember, because now like Sirius has a radio station that's basically 90s and 2000s hard rock, but we'll just basically call a spade, and it's the new metal era of music. And, I find myself and my wife listening to that station quite a bit, and it is nostalgic. It is what we grew up listening to. Same with, the burgeoning like metalcore scene and so forth and hardcore scenes of that same era. But it's just so funny to have been around for the start of something, essentially, to see it, boil over and just become this thing, like, thinking about like Ozfest tours and so forth, where, a lot of the bigger bands were breaking on Ozfest and headlining, arenas and so forth back in the day. And some of them are still around and still playing arenas and stadiums and so forth. So obviously the staying power of the style of music has lasted. But I still argue, and have for the longest time, that nu metal, as far as a genre tag, is almost genre-less, because when I think of nu metal, or when I think most people think of nu metal, they go Slipknot, and it's like, okay, Slipknot's a pretty aggressive band by its most standards, but it's like Slipknot doesn't sound like Korn doesn't sound like Deftones, a band like Union Underground doesn't sound like, Static X. Like, it kind of incorporates a little bit of everything from, rap, industrial, sort of, in Deftones kind of case, a little bit more of like kind of alternative music and so forth, to death metal and kind of everything in between. So I find it to be a very interesting time period of music where this tag got put on a genre, but it's kind of, like I said, genre-less. And then it got really diluted pretty quickly. And then it became a bad word. Like some of the bands I've mentioned, like your System of a Down, your Korns and things like that, tried to distance themselves from the label so hard, going like a 180 in the other direction, that it's funny to see, 20 something years later now, that nu metal is coming back. It's cool. A lot of these bands that maybe weren't as popular are now hitting this new resurgence and so forth. No pun intended there with the new, but it's just kind of wild to see something that really came out of nowhere, gained so much popularity, then was a bad word, then people distanced themselves from it, to now having people be like, yeah, I love nu metal, I love this band, da-da-da-da-da, and you're just like, it's fucking wild to see. And, for someone like Robby, who probably experienced a lot of this firsthand, being in Stuck Mojo, that's a band that I feel like doesn't get enough credit for what they really were doing back then. And it's great to see, like Rich and stuff like that, having success in Fozzy, but it's just kind of wild to kind of see it. And I was kind of thinking too that I feel like at this point, because I like collecting, I like being a completionist with things. I feel like at this point, since I've had two vocalists from Stuck Mojo on the show, I now need to go through the process and try to get the rest of them on. But I think Scott Bowling is going to have me beat on that. I think he's had a few. I know he's had Lord Nelson. I don't know if he's had Robby. I know he's tight with the Stuck Mojo camp as a whole, so I feel like Scott will probably be the first to complete that task. And if you haven't seen any of Scott Bowling's episodes with some of the Stuck Mojo guys, go check those out. They're always great. And he's always done a great job of supporting myself and a lot of the other groupings of us in this, music-based interview scene. Cheap plug for Scott Bowling. Merry Christmas. All of that said, let's start wrapping up this episode. If you would like to keep up with Sicksense, they have a link tree. It's Linktree 6Xsense. That pretty much will be all their socials across the board. Facebook 6Xsense, Instagram 6Xsense, and Twitter at 6Xsense. If you like keep up with Vicky, you can find her. She has a Linktree as well, Linktree at Killer V. She does her Twitch streaming quite a bit during the week. I don't remember the exact schedule that she's got. And Robby obviously shows up and does stuff with her as well. But you can find her on Instagram and Twitter at Vicky Siraxis. I believe that's how you say her name. I believe the P is silent. Usually when a P and an S are together, the P is silent. Usually. But I could be wrong. I'm also notoriously, self-admittedly, very bad at pronunciating names sometimes. And again, I always say it's from being from the East Coast and living in the Midwest. Vowels really throw me because I want I can see either pronunciation of them, and so I usually just clam up and I'm like, ooh. If you like Keep Up with Robby, you can find him on both Instagram and Twitter at Robby J Fonts. And if you would like to keep up with us, you can follow us on all social medias. Brew Speak Pod, pretty much everywhere. Everyone's been asking about Blue Sky. I know I've said this ad nauseum. When the old things like Instagram, all that stuff, when those go away, I'm not adopting to the new stuff. I'm done. So I'm not on that. I'm not going to be. So there's just that. You can email me, brutallyspeaking@gmail.com. Been loving more emails been popping in lately, kind of going over some different things from past episodes. That's been great. Some of the DMs and comments on episodes have been great as well. Keep that up. Keep that going. If you can, whatever you're listening to the show on, rate, review, subscribe. You know why that is important. Please do so. It's been great to see the numbers growing, to see episodes being shared and so forth, and new people coming on. Thank you so much. Rockabilia.com. Want to thank them for their continued support of the show. Head on over to Rockabilia. Pick up something great for the music lover in your life. The holidays, well, I mean, as of when you're hearing this, you have like a week, this week, to get this out, to get it done. So if you need a last minute item, I don't know if it'll ship to you in time, but you can go there, use our code BREWtally at checkout, take 10% off your total purchase order. Get something for that loved one that's a music fan in your life, and let them know that we sent you. So huge thanks to Rockabilia. And for the Brutally Speaking podcast, I will see you all next time with Victor from LLNN. That was a interesting, fun chat. We'll talk more about that when we get into it. Enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend, and I'll talk to you all next time.